Hi, and welcome to Art with Mrs. Torres. This week we are going to be making a little Halloween cat with a pretty moon in the background, and you'll notice the eyes on this cat are spectacular. I'm going to show you some fun tricks and tips, and this project is in honor of my cat. Her name is Molly. Now, she's not a black cat, but she does have some beautiful eyes, and I bet if we look right now, we might see her trying to get into my art shed. Let's see if she's over there. There she is. You can see she wants to come in and do the art lesson too. So this is going to be super fun. I can't wait to teach you. All right, let's get ready to make our spooky cat picture. The items you're going to be using today are a few different kinds of mediums. I'm giving you some choices here. So just in case you don't have one of the products that I'm talking about, I have other options for you. If you have chalk pastels, this is what we're going to be using for our background today. So if you have chalk pastels, not oil pastels, but chalk. Chalk is the kind that are very powdery when you run your finger over them, and they're usually a square shape. So if you have chalk pastels, we're going to be working with those. If you don't have chalk, if you have watercolors, watercolor will also give you this soft background. So if you don't have chalk, you can use watercolor. If you have watercolors, grab those anyway, because you might want to use that for painting the big areas instead of using a marker. So if you have watercolors, grab those. If you are going to be using your watercolors, make sure you get some water and a paintbrush. The other items you're going to need are crayons. You're going to need crayons for the eyes on the cat. And if you don't have chalk pastels or watercolor, you can also use crayons. If you peel the wrapper off, you can use blue and black crayons to kind of give you the same effect for the background. And it's a little bit different, but it kind of works kind of the same. And that's why using crayons. Lastly, you're going to need a pencil, an eraser, and a Sharpie marker for doing all of our detail work. And then you're probably wondering what this is for. We're going to be using a can today to do our outline for our moon. So go ahead, pause the video, and the things that you are going to be looking for once again are a heavier weight piece of paper, either construction paper or watercolor paper. If you don't have those items, that kind of paper, you can just use the paper that's in your printer. You're going to need a can for tracing. You're going to need a pencil, an eraser, a Sharpie marker. You're going to need crayons. And then for your background, you can choose chalk pastels or watercolor. I would still get watercolor no matter what. It'll make our process a little faster a little bit later. If you don't have either of these items, you can use crayons that are peeled. Lastly, before I forget, you definitely want to get some paper towel or napkin. We're going to be using this for wiping our hands and also protecting our area when we're working. So grab some paper towels. Go ahead and pause the video and meet me back here when you are ready. All right, welcome back. We are ready. You're going to use your paper and your pencil and a Sharpie marker and your eraser to begin. And we're going to start by designing our layout for our picture. So we're going to be putting our cat in the lower left corner. We're going to be putting a spooky tree coming out from the right side. And then in our distance, we'll have a moon and our little haunted house up on a hill. So to start with, we're going to take our pencil and we're going to be creating a large circle over in the left-hand corner for our cat's face. Now make sure this is really big. We really want to take up a lot of space with this cat. That's the main focus of our picture. You can add some shoulders for the cat. And then the ears are going to be a wide triangle. Ears are pretty far apart. And then we're going to draw a spooky tree that's coming up inside of our paper. going off to the side. So I'm just going to kind of go like this for my tree. Like the cat is kind of in front of the spooky tree maybe. And then our branch will head over this direction, right by the cat's ear. So to make our branch, we're just going to kind of draw a wonky, bendy line like this. And then we're going to twirl it around on the end. And the other side of the branch is going to be a little wider. And then it's going to taper down and get thinner toward the end. We'll go over all these lines with our marker later. Now in the distance over here, this is where we're going to be placing our can for drawing our moon. But before I do that, I just want to make sure I've got enough space up there. So I'm going to grab my can and set it up here. And when you're setting your can in the corner, you want to make sure, see if I can show you this way. You want to make sure that there's room when your can is resting, that there's room at the top of the paper and room on the side of the paper so that the can isn't hanging off the edge like this. You want the entire can to be on top of the paper so there's a little bit of space around it. That way you can put the chalk powder all the way around. Okay, so we don't want to lose the outline of our cat. So what I'm going to do right now, before we begin with our chalking, is I'm going to mark it by just quickly outlining with my Sharpie marker the outline of my cat. I'm not going to worry about the details right now. It's just to mark that area because I'm going to be rubbing a chalk all over the background. Now, if you don't have chalk, you're going to be doing the same thing, except you're just going to be doing it with watercolor. So I would recommend getting your little bowl of water and adding water to the top of your paints. I showed you how to do this before in our other lesson. So if you're going to be making a watercolor wash, you want to make sure that the paint is very liquidy. So whatever color you're going to be using, you want to add drops of water to the top of it like this. And then when you're painting, you're going to be painting with the water that floats on top. So you have a nice light coat. And so if you don't have chalk, you're going to be painting this whole background and you're going to decide the colors you want to do. So I am doing blues and purples in my background. However, you might want to do more of a sunset color like this. So if you want to do more of a sunset color, you could do oranges and yellows. So for those of you that are painting, you're going to pause the video and go ahead and paint your background. For those that have chalk pastels, you're going to follow along with me right now. So I'm not going to be painting my background. So I'm going to move my paints off to the side. I'm going to get my chalk pastels and I'm going to place those next to my work to get ready to use chalk. All right. So the first thing is I'm going to be grabbing the color scheme. So you're either going to go with your warm colors and do a sunset, or you're going to do the cool colors for more of a midnight sky. So I'm going to be doing cool colors. I'm going to be grabbing a blue. I don't want to go with too light of a blue, so I'm going to go with something that's a little brighter. And I want to make sure my can is up kind of in the corner of the paper, but that there's definitely an edge around it of paper. I'm going to lay my chalk down on its side, and I'm just going to put a light coat of chalk. And I'm going to rest my fingers on top of the can so the can does not shift or move. We definitely want to keep that can still. So I might trade fingers as I'm using my other hand to help me with the chalk. I'm just going to rub my chalk very lightly at the top of the paper. I'm not going to do any chalk down here. I won't need to because my tissue is going to be full of chalk. So I won't really need to bring the chalk any lower. But you do want to get your chalk right up next to the can as best you can. When I'm done with one color blue, I'm going to move into a darker shade of blue. So I'm just going to grab another shade out of my box. And I'm going to rub the darker shade up around the top. See, I'm trading my hands and using my other hand. My left hand is my dominant hand. My right hand I'm not very good at because I'm not right-handed, but doing my best. I'm going to rub a little bit of this darker color up at the top, not too much. And then I'm going to go in and add purple for my final color. So I'm going to put a little bit of purple up at the top of the paper. I'm going to keep pressing really hard on that can because I don't want my can to shift. All right, I am done. My hand is staying on the can. And now I'm going to grab tissue to rub my chalk in. So you can use a paper towel. You can also use toilet paper. I like toilet paper. It's just a little softer to work with, but whatever you have on hand will work. So I'm just going to kind of roll up this toilet paper here. A tissue would work great too. And you can see there's a bunch of powder here, so you don't want to blow. And what you're going to do is you're going to start at the very top and you're going to just kind of roll your tissue up into like a little ball like this. And you're just going to rub your chalk in a circle very softly up at the top. Now, most of the chalk is going to end up on your tissue, and that is okay. We just don't want it ending up all over you. And I'm rubbing across the top, and then I'm going to really get right in to the edge of this can. That part is the most important. It's getting it so it's pressed right up to the can. Do your very best to not let that can move. And then you're just going to rub all that chalk in. And you're going to bring it all the way down to the cat. So I've got all this extra chalk, so I don't need any more at the bottom. Just going to get a little bit lighter as it goes down. You go all the way down to the bottom of the paper. You're going to cover up where your tree began, your drawing of your tree. If you get it on your cat, it's okay. You can kind of rub it out like this. And we can also pull the chalk out using our eraser later. And then the last thing is just to brush off any excess chalk, keeping your hand still on that can. And then you can always make the top darker again before we move on, because we've already got our first coat in. So I'm going to go back in with my purple. Add a little bit more. And you can even go in and put a tiny bit of black. Don't use a lot though, but you can make a little bit of black up at the top just to make it a little darker. Going back in, using the dirty side of my tissue. You definitely want to keep using that dirty side because it's already got that color on it. And I'm going to blend those colors in. Right up to the edge of the can. And then you're just going to slowly bring it down so it blends nicely with the rest of your color. So it gets kind of lighter as it goes to the bottom. When I'm finished, all that extra chalk is rubbed off. Then I'm just going to carefully lift my can up. And you should have a little bit lighter space in here where your can was for your moon. Now don't worry if it got some smudges on it because you're going to be covering it up with other things later. So it won't matter if you didn't get a perfect hard line because look, we're going to be adding a bunch of fun things. All right, let's move on. Now it's time. Let me take this off. Now it's time to work on our cat. Okay, so we are going to be using a pencil and our magic rubber eraser to draw our cat. We're done with our chalk. I'm going to move that off to the side. And we're going to start our cat by using our pencil. First thing we're going to do is draw a line right down the middle of the cat's face. It doesn't need to be perfectly straight, and it doesn't need to be really dark, just a line that you can see. And then we're going to draw a line across the middle of the cat's face this way. This is going to help us create the eyes on the cat. Now I'm going to make my line kind of dark you can see it on the camera. However, I want you to be drawing this really light. So we're going to be creating these kind of almond-shaped cat eyes. Think about like a football or an almond shape. And so that plus sign helps me place my eyes in the right spot. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go from the center dot right here where those two lines meet in the middle, and we're going to go a little bit away from there, and we're going to make a little dot where our eye is going to start. And then we're going to match that on this side. So that will be the corners of our cat's eye. So we have to decide, do you want your eyes close together or you want them kind of far apart? So I'm going to make mine a little bit farther apart, I think. So I'm going to bring mine out just a tiny bit more, maybe to there. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be drawing a gentle curve that comes up and around. It's not a rainbow, it's actually a curve, and we're not going to bring it down to here. We're just going to curve it up, but we're going to stop it higher than this area here because we want it to kind of have a tilted almond shape. Then I'm going to go over to this side and I'm going to try my very best to match the same shape, this kind of rounded curve. And it's going to come around, but it's going to stop before it gets down to this line. Then we're going to match it by coming to this side, and then we're going to bring this line coming down and then coming back up to a point. Definitely want to make sure it comes to a point on the end, and that's going to give it that almond shape. So once I've drawn this part of the eye, once you're happy with your lines, you can darken them. And you're going to go in and erase that plus sign line that's inside because we don't need it anymore. You can actually leave it here because it's not going to show. We're going to cover everything up with black later, so those plus sign lines won't show. But in the eyes, we want to keep our eyes nice and white. So we definitely don't want to have any of that in there. Now, also, if you got some chalk inside the cat while we were smudging it earlier, it'll come right out with your eraser. So when you're finished, then you're just going to gently get those eraser crumbs off your picture. And now we're going to draw the pupil. So the pupil on a cat is different than our pupil. So our pupils are rounded. Cat's pupils kind of have a little point. It almost looks like two fangs, like teeth coming down. So you want to come a little bit away from the corner of the eye, not right in the center, but about right here. And you're going to draw a gentle curve coming in. I'm going to match it on this side. And then you're going to go quite a distance away. And this line is going to come down and connect. It should come down to a point. Now later, we're going to go in and we're going to color that with our marker. And the cat's eyes are going to look really cool when we're done. Okay, so now we have that cat drawn out. So now we can go in with our marker and we can trace over the eyes. And we can trace over a point in the middle. When you're finished, you can erase any pencil lines inside the eyes that you don't want to keep. And then we're going to go in and now we're going to create some other fun things in the background. So we started with our pencil earlier, kind of figuring out where we wanted our tree, but my pencil line is not showing up very well. Is yours showing up? So I'll just have to redraw it and decide how I want it to go. I remember I had my line kind of coming up like this, and it was going to come out I'm just going to swirl it around. You want to make your branch wider as it comes closer to the trunk of the tree and skinny as it comes out. Now, the other thing that we're going to be adding in the distance is maybe a hill and maybe a little spooky house. Now, you don't have to do a house. You could also just put a bat in the background. So if you don't want to do a haunted house up on the hill, you could put a bat in front of the moon, and that would look really wonderful too. So if you do want to do a little spooky house, they're super fun to draw. So if you do, you can follow along with me. So the first thing I want to do is let me just take my marker and trace my branch. The branch wants to get a little bit wider as it comes back to the tree. We'll color in all of our branches, our cat and everything later. Right now, we're just kind of creating. So I'm going to add a couple windy branches. And you don't have to make your branches this style. I mean, you can kind of create your branches however you want. Just make sure that they're always a little bit wider, closer to the branch that they're coming out of, and they're always skinny at the ends. But you want to save room also for some bats. So let me show you how to make a bat first. So if you want to create a bat somewhere in your picture, so in my picture, I did a bat over here because I'm making a house over here. So if you want to make a bat, find a space where you can fit one in. And so I could do a really tiny bat out here, but let me draw one over here where I have a little bit more room. So to draw a bat, I start, oh, by the way, take your paper towel right now before you rest your hand down and you get a bunch of chalk on your hand. Take your paper towel or your tissue and lay it down like this to rest your hand on. Most of you are going to be right-handed, so that means you're going to be resting it this way, and you're going to be holding your pen this way. That way you don't smudge that chalk underneath. So I'm a lefty, I'm putting it right here. So to draw my bat, I'm going to start with a circle for the head, and I'm going to color it in, and then I'm going to give my bat 2 pointed ears. And right here underneath his head, I'm going to draw a straight line that comes down. And then for the body, you're just going to kind of round it out and then bring it back in. It kind of appears to look like the inside of a butterfly, kind of like the body of a butterfly when you first do that. But to make it look like a bat, I'm going to give him wings. So I'm going to go right up here where his shoulder would be, and I'm going to draw a short line that comes up, and then a long line that tapers out like this. I'm going to match it. Whatever I did on this side, I'm going to match it on this side. So short line coming up, a long line tapered out. It's okay that my bat is going to be overlapping the tree because actually the bat will be in the distance and this branch will look like it's in front when we're done. Now to do the bottom part of the wing, what I do is I come right up here, right next to the first line that I did, and I draw a short line that curves down, almost like you're drawing a leg. Make sure that that's short. And then I'm going to curve it up and around and bring it down a little longer. And do that again on this side, up and around, just a little bit longer. So whatever I do on one side, I usually try to do on the other side so they match. And so our goal is to get to the end of this wing and make sure it comes to a point. So I could stop it right here, or I think I could add another one and then bring it to a point here. So on this one, I don't want to bring it straight out. I'm going to bring it up, around, and then bring it to a point. You just want to make sure they come to a point, and then you can just take your marker and color it in. So I use the side of my marker because it's a lot faster because you're using kind of the more thicker part of the marker to fill it in. And once you know how to make a bat, you can go in and add many more later once we're done with everything else. So the next thing we're going to be doing is designing our haunted house in the background. So depending upon how you drew your cat or how high your cat is, you can first decide where your little mountaintop is that your haunted house is going to be on. And then you can decide where the bottom of the hill is. This area will all be colored in black. It's just going to kind of blend in with this tree. But now we're going to come into the fun part of the haunted house. So you want your haunted house to have some really fun angles. So I'm going to start by creating a shape that looks like this at the bottom. So I'm just going to start over here where my little mountain top is, and I'm going to draw one line that comes this way. And then over here, I'm going to have one line that comes out this way. So this is the widest part of my house. I'm going to close it off with a roof. And I'm going to add a door. And a window. And I'm going to draw maybe some window panes inside. Now later, we'll be coloring everything in except for the doors and the windows. So it's going to make this cool silhouette effect. So now I'm going to move on to the next level of my house. So I'm going to make a little roof. And now I'm going to create the next level. So I could do a shorter one right in the middle, or I could branch it off and make maybe two different levels. So I think I'm going to make mine kind of crooked. I'm going to make one going this direction with a high peaked roof. And on this one, I'm going to have it going the other way with a high peaked roof. And then I'm going to create some kind of weird window here. And on this one, I'm going to have a different style window, maybe a circular window. You could also draw a little chimney. And then you can start to fill it in with your marker. Now remember, as you're filling it in, you want to keep the windows and the doors open so that you can see the moon or the sky through them. So once you're done designing your house, then you're going to go in and start coloring it, just the way I'm doing mine. Now you can make your house as high as you like. You can add as many details as you like as you're going. You could draw some cobwebs in the corner. You could draw maybe a pumpkin in the window. You could draw ghosts coming out of the house if you wanted to. So if I were you, I would practice on another piece of paper. I would pause the video as you're working, and then maybe practice on another piece of paper what you want it to look like. And then you can add those details as you go along. Just remember to try to keep your windows and your doors not colored in. Everything else is silhouette. So it's just going to all be black. So go ahead and pause the video and then fill in your house and color in your mountain. And you're also going to want to color in this tree. Now, this is where if you have watercolor paints, it'll be a little faster for you to color this in with your watercolor paints, or you can use your marker. So let me show you real quick what it would look like if I use my watercolor paint. I think when you're getting to a big area, it's so much quicker to use paint than it is to use marker. So I've got my bowl of water, and the only color I'm going to be using is the black. I'm going to add about 10 drops of water to the black watercolor paint. And then I'm going to very softly, gently kind of tickle the top of that water just to kind of loosen that paint up underneath. Then you can use this paint to fill in big areas. So let me show you how quick I can fill in this whole side of the tree by using watercolor paint. Now this would work just fine using my marker, but if you want to save some time and you do have watercolor paint, you can do the same thing with paint, just a little faster. Once you have painted your tree and your branches, then I want you to turn the video back on. So I'm going to be filling in my mountain and my tree branches, but not the cat. So I'm going to have you pause the video and you're going to be doing what I'm doing, just filling in your black silhouette of your mountain, your haunted house, and your branches, all the branches that you drew. And then meet me back here when you have that done and we'll start working on the cat, okay? All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, I have to ask you your opinion. What do you think? I went to fill in my mountain here, but if I fill in the mountain, then my cat's ear isn't gonna show because it'll all be black and the cat's gonna be black, right? So I was trying to figure out what to do, and I decided at the last minute to maybe take my either marker or my black paint, and I made like these little stripes. Do you see those? And so it still makes a pattern, but it's different than the cat and the tree. So I just kind of went like this. I guess I could have done it differently. I just didn't know how to do it. What do you think? See, that's the fun part about art. There's not really any right way to do it. You just kind of have to experiment a little bit. So I guess that's what I'm doing right now. And it's kind of fun because you're right in the middle of the experiment with me. So that way it still looks like different than the tree. It's different than the cat. The cat's going to be painted black in just a minute, but I think it's going to work. I don't know. I'm hoping so. So now we have our cat to figure out. So you have two choices. You can either color your cat with your marker, especially if you have a big fat marker. Look at this one. I found this in my junk drawer. So if you were going to use a big fat marker like this, oh my goodness, you can color this so fast. Look at how wide that tip is on this marker. But I happened to find this in my junk drawer. I don't normally use these for art. You could also use one of those Crayola markers because they have a little bit broader tip on them. They're a water-based marker, so you could use that. Or you can use the marker we always use. Where did my Sharpie go? There it is. So if you have this Sharpie, you can use this too. It's just going to take you a little bit more time because the tip of it is skinnier. See, so I can still get the same effect. It's just going to take me a little bit more time to color it in. That's how I did my little haunted house up there. You're going to want to color in this part of the eye. And you're going to want to color in the rest of the cat. This is where your black paint comes great in if you have watercolor paint. So I add a couple more drops to my paint, stir it around very gently. I'm not touching the paint. I'm just kind of working with the water that's floating on top. And your paint can fill that space really quick. Now, when I get around the eyes, you'll notice I'm going to go much slower and take my time. So for this big area, you could paint this pretty quick. Now, if you have a wider paintbrush, you can do this even faster. I'm just working with the brush that came with my watercolor set. I have other brushes that I like much better, but I always like to work with the same exact things that I think you might have in your house. I'm always adding a little bit more water to the paint to spread it out. And then once my cat is all filled in, we'll add whiskers. And if we have room, we can add a tail. So right now, I'm almost done. My paper's starting to curl up. That happens when you're painting. So I just put my finger right here where it's dry to hold it down. And then as I get closer to the eye of the cat, I'm going to be a lot more careful with my paintbrush. You could also even go in with the Sharpie marker. Here's another trick. You can take your marker and you can ink around the eye like this, farther away from the eye. See what I'm doing? I'm just kind of outlining and making that outline much thicker. And that way, you don't have to bring the paint quite so close to the eye. So see how I'm kind of enlarging that outline? And then when I go in with my paintbrush, the paintbrush doesn't have to get so close to that white eyeball. So now I can go in with my paintbrush. And I'm not so close to the eye, I don't have to worry so much about my hairs of my paintbrush getting into the eye. Now, if you are using paint, I would recommend going in and painting a second coat over everything. And the reason I tell you that is that way it's very solid. See how the paint leaves some lighter spots? So you might want to go back in and just put a second coat. Make sure everything is all the same darkness. And then we're going to get ready to finish our picture by adding our final details. And we're going to color the eyes too. So I'm putting in my second coat real quick. Now I can go up with my marker while this dries. I'm going to let this dry because the cat's going to take a little bit of time to dry because I do have two coats there. So while that dries, now I'm going to go in with my marker and I'm going to see if I want to add a few more fun details to my house in the distance and the branches on the tree. So I could go in and add more branches on my tree. I could add also some more details on my house. So I've got a little space up here. I could add maybe one more level to my house. Maybe it's going all the way off the top of the paper. You could draw a spider web. Let me show you how to do that. So you can go like this from a corner and you draw kind of like an arrow pointing right to the corner. See how here's the tip and you go 3 lines going like this. And then what you do is you connect each line with a curve. And then you connect the next lines with another curve. And then you can draw a little spider. You could draw a pumpkin. You could draw some tombstones. You want to make it more creepy. You could draw a couple more bats in the distance. So if you're making another bat, you would want to make this bat smaller. Not as large as the other one. Line that goes up and out. And then you're going to make this kind of mountain shapes, always ending in a point. Color those in with your marker. And to add more branches to your tree, to fill in space. I like adding a lot more branches. And then our final detail are the eyes on the cat. So let me show you how to do that. So for our eyes, well, my cat is still wet. So if you are working now, I would wait till your cat is dry before you do the eyes. But I'm going to show you carefully how to do those. So I use crayons. You could also paint it, but I think crayons are a little easier to work with. Colored pencils will work wonderful too. You're going to start with your lightest color. Now, my eye is not wet here at all. It's wet out here, but my eye is dry because I use Sharpie. So I start with a light yellow, a bright yellow. And I'm going to color a good solid color in there. And then I'm going to outline my yellow with green. And that's going to make this really beautiful glowing-eyed cat. My cat Molly has eyes kind of similar to this. So once I have my yellow in there, I'm going to go over the yellow with a little bit of lime green. I'm going to go harder around the corners right here around the edge. And then when I'm done with my lime green, I'm going to go over with my dark green. Now, if you don't have a lime green, just go straight in with the dark green. So I'm outlining it, kind of adding this extra layer. And then I always add a little bit more around the corners right here. And then I'm going to go in now with my darkest green crayon. And once I'm done outlining it, I'm going to just kind of feather real softly, just a little bit around the corners, just so the eye looks a little bit more rounded. And then my final part, I'm just going to add a tiny hint of this on the edges of that black pupil. Well, before we say goodbye today, I want to show you a couple more details that you can add. I added some whiskers using my marker. I added a tail, and I added just a couple more branches, but you don't have to add those things. But if you do, it just adds a little bit more fun to the picture. I hope you had fun today. I had fun teaching you. If you want to send me a photo of your artwork, you can send it to rtorres@lcusd.net. I would love to see a photo of the work you're doing. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.